Greetings. I invite you to take a trip with me to the beach. Will you come? All right. I want you to imagine a warm August day at your favorite Maine beach. Okay, we're here. What do you notice first? Is it the sun on your face, the breeze across your skin, or is it your feet sinking into the sand with each wave that laps, sinking deeper and deeper, connecting us to that Mother Earth of ours? It just amazes me that those waves never end, as long as the moon's here. Something constant, and yet each wave being so different. But for me, living inland, the thing I notice most when I go to the beach is the fresh salt air. And I love breathing it in. So I'm going to invite you to take a breath in with me. Okay? Here we go. I think I feel so good with that breath because it reminds me of our primordial beginnings of life in the sea. It really makes me feel connected. What do we see out there today? Oh, there's a seal. I think it's curious why there's 300 of us standing near. Beyond the seal, there's a lot of color out there, a little bit further out. You know, when I was a child, the lobster buoys were made like this, from wood. This one holds special meaning for me. This was my grandfather's buoy that I watched him turn on the lathe, and we would help him paint his colors, blue and white and buff. Made from wood, very renewable substrate, stores a lot of good carbon, lasts for decades. A little bit heavy, but it took a lot of time and effort to craft each one. It was really a work of art, and each lobsterman had their own signature on the water. Today, when we look out there, a lot more of the colors are neon, fluorescent. And the buoys we see today are made from this amazing material, styrofoam. You know, when it came along in the 50s and 60s, it was the cat's meow. Lightweight, easy to haul, and really cheap to make, really cheap to buy. Or was it? Because it comes from a fossil fuel, and that took 65 million years to make under the Earth's crust. There's a lot of carbon footprint association making this styrofoam product and extracting that oil, refining it, transporting it, retransporting it. But the worst thing is that the styrene molecule in expanded polystyrene, aka styrofoam, is carcinogenic. We didn't know that then. We know it now. So I want you to think about how cheap this really is for all of us and the environment. And today what I'd mostly like to share with you is a story of a new material. Adam referred to it. And I grew this buoy in a soda bottle in a week in my kitchen. And then I popped it and dried it in the sun for another week. And it is made from just hemp and a fungus. It's also lightweight, strong, holds its shape, and it floats. And its carbon footprint is very, very small. In fact, it's storing the carbon that the hemp sequestered from the atmosphere while it lasts. And when it doesn't last any longer, it gets composted beautifully back into the land or the water, returning all those nutrients from where they came. Let's take another look out there. What is it we don't see? We don't see the billions of microscopic algae called phytoplankton that are out there photosynthesizing. And we don't see the billions of microplastic particles that are beneath the surface either. You know, we often hear reference made to the Amazon as the lungs of the planet, when in fact, those tropical forests only produce 6% of the total oxygen we take in. And of course, trees breathe in carbon dioxide and release oxygen, kind of opposite of what we do. 50 to upwards of 70% of the oxygen we breathe in comes from those phytoplankton. Another 20% comes from algae and freshwater bodies. So I have these nightmares sometimes. Like, what happens if we lose the microalgae in the oceans? You can remember it as every other breath we take comes from the ocean. And so if we lose some of that, are we going to suffocate? And will it happen locally or regionally or globally all at once? This is a horrible nightmare for me, and I'd rather not think about it, because I really am an optimist and I believe in solutions. We live by some of those solutions require us to really comprehend how life runs on our planet. And so we have this giant solar reactor in the sky called the sun, and it's beaming down particles of light, photons. Plants with their chloroplast molecules, the algae in the sea, the seaweeds, the plants, the trees, are taking carbon dioxide, drawing it down from the atmosphere in a combination with water, and they're making, through photosynthesis, a simple sugar called glucose. And the plants keep continuing on, and they build those glucose molecules into long-chain polymers, making all the building blocks of life. Those polymers are carbohydrates and proteins and lipids and nucleic acids like DNA. The opposite of composing life is decomposing life. Guess who does that? My pals, the fungi. And so the fungi take those long-chain polymers that the plants have made and decompose them, break those chemical bonds back into simple elements, returning the carbon dioxide to the air and the water. So you see, it's just a big circle. Life is just a big circle. And it's been spinning like this for at least 400 million years without creating any waste. We humans have a mistaken belief that life and natural resources are infinite, that we can keep growing a linear economy, upward trajectory, wasting parts of what we're extracting along the way, despoiling the air, the land, and the water. But is that real? We live on a finite planet. You know, there is no planet B. Just the molecules we have here, X, not X plus 1. Unless an asteroid happens to hit, we get a few more, but we have just X. So if you do the math, you wouldn't want to waste any of those molecules that are circling around, would you? The more we waste, the fewer we have. And I believe we have lots of solutions. You know, I think differently. I think that Mother Earth has rebalanced her living crust many times over. And the fungi are very helpful here. Why? Because they've been on the planet for half of the geologic history. It's hard to comprehend geologic time, isn't it? We most often think of a clock. So the fungi would have come along around 6 o'clock, and we humans came along around a minute before midnight. Not really much time at all. Why fungi? They have a lot of ancient wisdom locked up in their cells. You know, they're really good at mass extinctions. So 5 times we've had mass extinctions, and guess who's cleaned up all the debris? The fungi. They've come along to recycle it and decompose it, return it back on our finite planet. So we're in our 6th extinction now, one of humans caused. And the fungi are rising, and they're really starting to talk loudly and more loudly and more loudly. And in my 50 years of whispering with those mushrooms, I spend a lot of time listening to them, sitting with them in the woods and observing, experimenting, rethinking, smelling, taking them all in. They really do have a lot to say. You may have noticed in the news, there's fungi in the news almost every week now. So fungi can't feed themselves. They can't make their own carbon from the sun like plants do. And so they rely on an outside source of carbon, and they get it by either sharing it with a plant, killing for it, maiming, or eating the dead. In other words, as symbiotic partners, as parasites, pathogens, or decomposers. So back to those solutions. Of these partners, the ones that are really, really important are the fungus root relationship partners, the mycorrhizae, affiliated with 90 or more percent of terrestrial plants. This relationship in the ground is so essential to the plant's health that the plant sends 40% of its sugars to its roots to feed its fungi. And the fungi and bacteria hold on to that carbon, not for decades, not for centuries, but for millennia when we don't disturb those soils. It's a huge soil sponge soaking up all the water and all that carbon that we now have in the atmosphere. So within our lifetimes, we can reverse this. Other fungal solutions, my favorite ones are the composite materials, like the ones I made with the buoys. And as Adam mentioned, Ecovative is the world's leading mushroom material company, and we worked on first replacing styrofoam as protective packaging, went on to acoustical panels and building insulation and furniture and clothing and lampshades and coffins and yes, buoys. There are so many things we can do to replace, as Alexa said, some of the plastics, not all of them, but some of them, especially the toxic ones in the ocean. In order to really understand this problem, we have to know the extent of it, though. So plastics are the '1 pollutant in our oceans, ahead of nutrients runoff, which was #1 when I was a kid. To the tune of 20 million pounds of plastics being added annually to our ocean waters. And of those plastics, 17% on the surface are styrofoam. 23% below the surface are particles of styrofoam that never, ever go away. They just bioaccumulate up the food chain. I'm going to leave it to you to further research the adverse effects on human health. But what about adverse effects on plants and those phytoplankton? A study was published just this year showing a 2 to 12% decrease in the rates of photosynthesis based on microplastics. That means less oxygen for us and all the other aerobic organisms, doesn't it? And that nightmare comes back to haunt me. This is new science, not thrilling. But what if we could use fungal buoyancy to replace that percentage of those styrofoam plastics in aquaculture and fishing operations globally, starting here in Maine? For every 7.5 pounds of buoyancy that 1 pound of microbuoy affords, I think we can do this. I think we can make a difference. Before we leave the beach today, I want to breathe in one more last breath of that good salt air. Ready? Did it feel a little bit differently this time? I hope you've gained a new appreciation for every other breath you take and the vital role that fungi play in running life on the planet. Thank you.